to the Aboriginal channel. On this episode, I'm going to begin with pointing out that ancient American Indian culture consisted of heroes. So right here it says, when I looked up the Olmec hero twins, it says that down in La Venta there are two altars which were jaguars carried out from a niche or cave, places often associated with the emergence of human beings. So in their culture, they had a place where they believed human beings were created and life began. Then it goes on to say they may be mythic hero twins essential to Olmec mythology and perhaps forerunners of the Maya hero twins. And then over here, it says the great goddess of Tochohochcan. The Tochohochcan spider woman is a proposed goddess of the pre-Columbian Tococan civilization. So they had a spider woman. Says that the interpretation of the great goddess as being not only female but also male, a mixed gender figure. However that rolls out, this is not based on superheroes. It's based on anti-heroes. So we have to go over to who is known as Stone Cold Steve Austin, his Wikipedia page. He was born Stephen James Anderson, but after he won the Extreme Championship Wrestling or whatnot, his name changed to Stone Cold Steve Austin. He gained significant mainstream popularity as a brazen, vulgar, beer-drinking anti-hero who routinely defied the establishment and his boss. Now we got to go over and look at the definition for an anti-hero. It says an anti-hero is a main character in a story who lacks conventional heroic qualities and attributes such as idealism, courage, and morality. Although anti-heroes may sometimes perform actions that are morally correct, it is not always for the right reasons, often acting primarily out of self-interest or in ways that defy conventional ethical codes. So someone who is an anti-hero is someone who has no morals or no ethical code. So basically, we're going to figure out why Stephen James Anderson, born in Austin, Texas, became Stone Cold Steve Austin, the anti-hero. In order to do that, we got to go over to a couple of different Indian massacres down in Texas. It says the Skull Creek massacres referred to the murder of at least 19 Chiricahua people in Mexican Texas by Texan militia in February 1823. Before 1823, there were few settlers of European heritage from the United States in the state of Texas. Pause. So after this massacre, that's when more settlers of European heritage from the United States came into Texas. With the formation of the first Mexican Republic in 1823, so before 1823, there was no Mexican Republic there. What was there was Indians. It wasn't a Mexican Republic even after they're saying it right here in 1823. It says in the opening of Mexican Texas to colonists from the United States, white people began to settle in the state. The subsequent pushing of Native Americans off of their land, combined with Native American raids on the new settlers' cattle, led to deep hostility and conflict between the two groups. Okay, it says, after two colonists were killed by Coco people, a subgroup of the Chiricahua, a Texas militia company of 26 men was formed by Robert Kokindell. The company attacked a Chiricahua village of Skull Creek, killing 19 people and razing homes after stealing their possessions. There was no punishment for the attack, and hostilities continued until free Indians were eliminated from the land. But let's go down here what it says about the incident. It says the Coco Indians killed two colonists, although the circumstances are unclear. One theory is that this occurred while they were stealing corn. So Coco Indians caught some colonists stealing from them and they killed two of them. The colonists, led by the Robert guy, gathered 26 Texas militia who found a Chiricahua village in Skull Creek. They killed at least 19 inhabitants of the village, then stole the villagers' possessions and burned their homes to the ground. Multiple participants in the slaughter cited the cannibalism and warlike nature of the Chiricahua as a justification for the massacre. Now, 3 years later, there was another massacre called the Dressing Point Massacre. In the background of it says that the guy, Stephen Austin, the so-called father of Texas. So basically it says after scouting the land, Austin wrote that extermination of the Chiricahua would be necessary, although his first encounter with the tribe was friendly. He spread rumors among the settlers attributing cannibalism and extreme violence to the Chiricahua and sometimes more specifically to the Chiricahuas. Research has suggested that these accusations of cannibalism were false, possibly caused by his confusion of Chiricahua with another tribe. Now that's some bullshit. The Chiricahua had been horrified by cannibalism, which they saw practiced by shipwrecked Spaniards. So it just revealed that the Spaniards were indulged in cannibalism. It goes on to say that Austin's stories primed the colonists to believe that it would be impossible for them to live among the Kawakawa. When the Kawakawa began to poach the livestock being ranched on the land that they had been taken from their territory, conflict erupted between the groups. Several massacres were committed by settlers against the natives, including the Skull Creek Massacre. The whites encouraged neighboring Indian tribes to kill the Kurokawa, and Austin rewarded them with bounties of lead and gunpowder if they did so. So down here it says the consequences. It says the colonists called this massacre the site dressing point because there the Indians had received the dressing they deserved. After the massacre, the Coco Indians abandoned the region and settled west of the Guadalupe with the other tribes. Other smaller groups remained, but were continually harassed by the settlers, who took on Indian hunting as a sport. They also regularly raped Indian women. Goes on to say that on May 13th, 1827, Chief Antonio signed a second peace treaty permanently ceding the land to the colonists. Paul. Now that was 1827. It says that year, Austin founded the town of Matagorda, 3 miles from Desert Point, in order to protect settlers from the Indians. So even though they signed the treaty, they were still being attacked by the Indians because if they weren't, there would not be an order to protect settlers from the Indians. And that is further corroborated with the county information where it says Matagorda County was one of the original 23 counties of Texas created in the 17th of March, 1836 and organized in 1836 from an old Mexican municipality. That's a false statement right there because there was no old Mexican municipalities where there was nothing but Indians at. But that's what they like to say. Just like they said Louisiana was owned by the French, and then in the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, it was handed over to the Europeans or to the English, but it was always inhabited before and after 1803 by Indians. But it says right down here, it says this place was part of Stephen F. Austin's colony, which it says right here he founded the town of Matagorda in 1827, but it took another 9 years basically for it to become a county. And that's because of the many Indians still residing there that were being harassed by settlers, who those settlers, it says right here, took on Indian hunting as a sport. But I want to point out one more thing, that it says the shipwrecked Spaniards were indulged in cannibalism right here. And in a book I found online called 100 Things You're Not Supposed to Know: Secrets, Conspiracy, Cover-Ups, and Absurdities. Down here in the description, when it says read more, it says down the very last line, it says 1 of 10 people is not fathered by the man they believe is his dad. Barbie is based on a German sex doll, and the American colonists practiced cannibalism right here in this book called 100 Things You're Not Supposed to Know. So as a recap, I gotta say that this wasn't about the fictional wrestler character Stone Cold Steve Austin. However, we learned that his name is a slap in the face. It was not about heroes, yet we learned heroes are a part of Indian ideology, and there's a such thing as an anti-hero, which lacks courage, which is what one would do in spreading false rumors about some people to get others to do what he can't, which it pretty much wasn't about so-called father of Texas, Stephen A. Austin. Though we learned through a record of his actions how the West was really won. What this video was about was to expose a particular method in how the storytelling of history goes. For an example right here, it says the Skull Creek Massacre refers to the murder of at least 19 Kurokawa people in Mexican Texas by Texas militia in 1823. Before 1823, there were few settlers of European heritage from the United States. It says, with the formation of the first Mexican Republic in 1823 and the opening of Mexican Texas to colonists from the United States. So if it was Mexican Texas, then what is this? It says Apache, Comanche, Kiowa, Wichita, Tawakani, Kadu, Tawakawa, Bidai, Karakawa. So none of these are Mexicans. Through the history books, which has all been a lie. So therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie, then what's